Yo friends, what's up? Today I have a spooky one for you. Alright, I wanted to show you something cool today, and that is how you can take a React package and use it inside Svelte. Alright, so I want to take this popular drawing app Excalidraw, which is specifically made for React, and it might sound intimidating, but it's really actually simple. So today we're actually going to learn a bunch of cool things, and this is also a great excuse to learn how React actually works. So we have to study the enemy to understand it, and then we can use it inside of our Svelte app. Alright, so that means that first we're going to look at the React implementation that I have right here. So I just spun up our React app using Vite. Nothing fancy, right? Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. We can draw some shapes and etc. And everything works beautifully, right? So we're going to take the same thing and we're going to take it to Svelte. Alright, so I hope I didn't scare you too much, but before you get started, here's a message from our sponsor. I'd like to thank this video sponsor, you, the viewer. You can support the channel through Patreon or a YouTube channel membership. Members get early access to videos, help shape the content, and a special Discord role. You can find all of the links in the description. Thank you for your support. Alright, so while everyone was busy arguing about the new font on the Svelte side, I was busy studying the blade, reading the art of war. I am so ready for this, friends. Alright, so here we have a basic counter example in React. So basically we have this count here, this is a useState hook, and this entire thing is going to re-render once we update it. But what's really important to understand about React also is that it uses the virtual DOM under the hood. There's this common myth or misconception that people have been spreading for years that they picked the virtual DOM because it's faster than regular JavaScript, which is false. They picked it because it's fast enough. So they were like, okay, how can we do this the simplest way possible? Let's just re-render everything, right? Basically, that's how React works. Alright, so let's imagine that we have to, for example, import this inside of Svelte. Well, you might be thinking, okay, first we have to transpile this to something else, and this is another thing that you have to know about React. This is called JSX, right? So it looks like HTML, but it's actually not. It transpiles to JavaScript. And if you want to make React people upset, just tell them that JSX is just another templating language. Oh, you're never going to hear the end of it. But no, you don't understand. JSX is just functions under the hood when it's transpiled at the end of the day. Yeah, okay, sure, buddy. Okay, but let me tell you actually why this is so cool, because we actually don't have to transpile anything here. Let me actually show you the output of this component, which is ironically just JavaScript, as the bros say, right? Because we can actually see all of this looks the same, but this actually, the template part, JSX is actually converted to JavaScript function calls. So this button is actually react.createElement. Then we give the element that we want to create. We pass whatever props we want, like on click. So we pass increment, and then we can pass more children. And even if you look at the API here, so we can look at create element, we can see what it accepts. So the type, props, and then you can continue passing it on children. So in this example, here we pass it props, and then we can continue passing it children. It's smart enough to split this into different parts. So this is the first child, you press me, then it passes the actual value inside JSX, and then another child times. And as you can see, this is just code that we can write by hand. Alright, let's actually see how this works. I'm inside VS Code. Let me just open app.tsx. This is where I imported Excalidraw. So I have Excalidraw and welcome screen. So if I nest this inside Excalidraw, I'm going to get Excalidraw with this welcome stream at the start. Alright, so as we learned, this is just JSX, so we're actually going to do these manual function calls ourselves, and that's easy peasy lemon squeezy. Alright, but how do we initialize our React app? Hold on a second. Can you smell that? I can sense our React app initialization. That's right. So for example, if we go to main.tsx, we can actually find that everything happens here. Ah, okay, so what is this? Well, it's importing something named strict mode, which really isn't important for us. We actually only care about this app thing. Basically, the only thing we have to do, we have to import create root. Okay, so now what else is going to happen? Alright, so it's going to query this root element. So this is the unique root element where the React app inserts itself on the page. Alright, great. So now in Svelte, that's already what we do. We just have HTML, right, and everything else. And then we can just say render, and boom, we can render some JSX. That's how easy that is. And if we even go back to index.html, this is the root element that's being targeted. Alright, so with a bit of magic and trickery, we can make this easily work inside of Svelte. Alright, so I'm going to cd into the Svelte project, and then I'm going to install a couple of dependencies. So I'm going to install the core React package, then we need React DOM for creating the elements and rendering them. And this is the most hilarious part, is that React doesn't even use TypeScript, it uses Flow because it was made by Meta, right? And then of course, when we're done with that, we can install Excalidraw. And this is going to take a second because I already have these packages. And another thing I forgot to mention is that because I read the docs like a good boy, right? Everyone does this. I went to the installation, here are the packages. Okay, do I need something else here? And I was reading more. Then I saw integration. I got this error that I need environment variables for something. and it even has this entire section. If you're using Vite, then just include this in your Vite config. And this is basically what I've done. So for example, if I go back here, let me just start the development server, and I can show you this inside Vite config, site Svelte, boom, I just had to include this. And this just means that it's going to use Preact for the build, which you don't care about anyhow. Alright, so let's actually go to page.svelte, and the only thing that I've done is created and imported this Excalidraw component. Alright, let's just do something simple and render a hello world to the screen using React. Alright, so let's create a script tag, and then here we're going to create a root div. So let's give it a class root, and then we can actually create a binding for this. Let's name it root element. So let's say root element, and then give it a type HTML element. It's really not important. Alright, so how do we get a reference to this? Well, we have to wait until the component is mounted, and we can do this using effect. Alright, so I'm going to use an effect, and first thing we have to create a root. So I'm going to say let root, let's say create root, and now we have great type completion from TypeScript. So let's just do this, and now let's also do a cleanup. So I'm going to return a function, and on the root you have two things. You have render and unmount, so you can actually do this. And of course you can turn this entire component into a more generic create React component or something else, but in this case I'm only going to use it for Excalidraw. Alright, so create root wants something to be passed in, right? So we can see it wants a container. We can just pass it root element. Alright, so now that we have the root, we can say root render, and now we can pass it a React node. Alright, so how do we create a React node? Really simple. We can just say create element, and then we're going to see it accepts a type, props, and etc, right? So what we want to create, for example, we want to create a h1, and let's say we don't want to pass any props, and then let's also say hello world. Alright, this should be it. If I save everything, let's go back here, and we can see hello world on the page. Now we successfully running React inside of Svelte. How beautiful is this, friends? Well, terrifying for most people, I'm sure. Alright, so going back here, you might be thinking, let's just import Excalidraw, easy peasy, lemon squeezy, but you're going to see, you're going to run into a problem because Excalidraw doesn't work server-side, and I'm using sveltekit and server-side rendering. Of course, if you're just using client-side rendering, this isn't really a problem. For example, if I import Excalidraw right now, if I save this, and if I refresh this, we're going to get an error, right? And let's even see if there's anything in the console. Yeah, it just responded with an error. And then we can actually see it says document is not defined because it's trying to access document which doesn't exist on the server. Alright, so to fix this, we can actually do a couple of things. Alright, so the first option is that we can ignore this and just work on the component and temporarily disable server-side rendering. And then we can actually go back here and we can say something like if browser, and then we can actually await this component instead here using the await block, and we can then render it conditionally. But I don't think it should be your responsibility to know that this component is async or not. In my opinion, it should just work in a server-side render context or not, right? So I actually don't want to think about this, right? So let me actually just save this, and how we're actually going to do this, we're going to use dynamic imports. So here's how we can do this very easily. We can actually just say const, and here's going to be our module, and then I'm going to say import, and let's just say Excalidraw. Now we're going to remove it from here, and now we can destructure it like usual. So let's just do this. And of course we have to await it, which is actually going to cause an issue with effects because you shouldn't use await inside of effect, but in this case it's fine because we really don't care. So for example, if we make this async, it's going to complain, but whatever, we can actually just come here, we can say ps ignore. And of course you can use .then if you don't want to use await. You can create a function inside, you can invoke it, whatever you want. I'm just too lazy to be honest. Alright, so in this example where we have Excalidraw, let's actually log it out. Then we're going to see now we have this React component. This is basically like a blueprint or a description how React should create this element. So we just need to pass this to create element, and that's basically it. Alright, so inside of here, where we're creating this h1, we don't want to create a h1, we want to create Excalidraw. Alright, so let's just actually pass Excalidraw. That's basically it. But now we're going to see if we save this and refresh, it actually works, but it's not taking up the entire width and height, right? Let me actually see root. Yeah, we can actually see it's working. It's rendering it right here, but we actually need to fix the styles quickly. All right, so how can we do this? Let's just go here, create a style. Let's target root, and then we're going to say height 100 svh. All right, so you can actually save this, and now you're going to see if I even close the developer tools, we're going to see Excalidraw works beautifully, right? Of course, sorry for the flashbang. We can actually do a couple of things. we can actually go back here and we can say dark mode. But of course, it's not going to be respected if I reload this, so we can actually pass some props, right? And of course, I know this by reading the documentation. But in this case, how do we pass props? We create this Excalidraw element, and then we can just go here and pass whatever we want, and we have the beauty of TypeScript at our fingertips. Want to do something on change? No problem. Want to change the theme? No problem. Let's set it to dark, and let me save everything, and I'm going to reload. For good measure, you're going to see it works as expected. How beautiful is this, friends? We can even actually draw a nice smiley. Okay, this is an awkward smiley, but you get what I mean. Okay, let's include the welcome screen. So if you go to their docs, here under their API, there should be components. So they have a bunch of examples here. So here's how we can include the welcome screen. You just have to nest it in Excalidraw. But of course, we're doing all of this by hand, and it's actually kind of really simple. So the only thing you have to do, let's just import welcome screen. And of course, we know the props to create element is the type or the element itself, its properties, and boom, we can just continue adding children. So we can just go here and we can just say, actually, we can just say welcome screen. We have to create an element. And we can just say welcome screen. Cool. Let's save all of this. And now when we go back to our example, we can see it works as expected. So now we get this great welcome screen. All right, let's do something more complicated. So for example, I want to modify the menu so you can actually see at their example how we can do that. We have menu item, item link, custom default items, you can group things and etc. Here they have a bunch of examples, but I actually just want to modify the menu slightly, and we have to do this by hand, so let's see how we can do that actually. Alright, so back in our code example here, we're recreating this welcome screen. To include more children, we actually just need to specify an array. So we can create an array here, and now we can say create element, and now we can create the menu. Import main menu, and of course, not from here. Just take this. I'm going to put it right here where our import is. We can do this, and now we can just continue passing more things to the menu. And there's another thing that you're going to get a warning about. So let me actually just see if I open the developer tools. Yeah, if we go to the console, and let me just save everything. So now we're going to see this error, each child in a list should have a unique key prop. And basically it just wants us to pass a key prop. So we can actually just do this very easily. We can actually just pass a key, really doesn't matter what you type here. And we can actually go also here, we can actually see key, main menu, not menu. Interesting. Alright, so now where we have this main menu, we're rendering this and boom, we just continue doing this, right? So we can now also pass an array of children. Okay, so we can actually go here, let's create another element. And then we can actually say main menu dot default item, so we have some defaults here. So let's say load scene, for example. Let's give it a key. Alright, so let's say load, export, and save as. Let's see, export. Save as image. Alright, so now let's add a separator. What is the name? Is it separator? Let me just see. So you can also add the socials and other things. So maybe it's not default, it's under something, I know it is. Yeah, here it is, main menu separator. Alright, and then let's add more defaults. So we can go back here. What is that one? Change canvas background. Okay, let's add this. As you can see, it's really not that bad. Alright, so if I save this and we can now go back here to our example, we should have no errors. Alright, great. So now we can see we have a custom menu. Great. We have open, save to, export image, and we can even change the canvas background. How beautiful is this, friends? Alright, so we actually don't want to hard code these props here because let's say, for example, that we want to make this more reusable, we actually just want to pass the props here that we pass to the component. And this is actually really simple to do, so we can just get all of the props using $props. We can actually even type this. Excalidraw has a type for props. Very convenient. So it's called Excalidraw props. There we go. So if we look at the props and actually go to the type, we actually see it has all of the props on change. We can get the imperative Excalidraw API, so we can even see what the type here is. So when we get it, we can actually type it. And of course, you can do the same thing for these other types. If you go here to this Excalidraw type, we can actually see this is how I found out about this type. I just opened this types file and I was like, okay, what are the props? Type test Excalidraw props. Boom, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Alright, so now that we have these props, instead of hard coding them, we can just go here and let's just spread them. Cool. And you're going to see now if we save it, it's going to be nothing or it's going to be white because we actually didn't pass in anything. But we can actually just go back here to our page. And now with the power of TypeScript, I can just invoke this and now I get all of this type completion at my fingertips. How beautiful is this, rent? So we can actually just say dark. Now, if I refresh the page, you're going to see it's going to be dark. And now we can also get a reference to the Excalidraw API. So it was something like this. Let me see, Excalidraw API, and it's basically a function. So you get this API here, and then we're going to create this in a second. So we can say Excalidraw API equals API, right? So let's just create it here. Let's assign it state. Oh, and of course, let's just declare it. And then we can actually see imperative. Let's see if we can import it. Great, Excalidraw imperative API. That's precisely what I want. All right, and now you can see we even get this warning because this can be undefined, right? Yeah, as we can see, it can be undefined, so we can actually say TypeScript, okay, leave us alone. And then, of course, we have to use an effect because otherwise this is going to be undefined. And now we can do whatever we want using the imperative API from Excalidraw. So for example, we can say Excalidraw API on change, boom, and I can, for example, just pass it console log, but you get a bunch of things here. Let me just go here. You get the reference to the elements, you get the app state, you get the files, everything. All right, and let me also use optional chaining here because this might otherwise not exist. All right, so now I can press actually save, and now I'm going to open the developer tools. You're going to see we already get a bunch of logs. Let me just refresh everything. There we go. All right, so now you have this state. So you have the first thing array, items, you have the app state, and then you have files. So for example, let's say that I move my mouse and it's always working in the background, right? So you're going to see it's always going to update. You can update your state in Svelte, whatever you want to do. This is how you can make React work in Svelte. But yeah, that's basically it. If you like what you're seeing, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.